can tell you people they were the devil's children.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Aurora, Mickey, and from me. Today we have some rather serious ground to cover, and it's a very distressing subject, at least to people who care about decency and such matters as family loyalty. It is distressing. So, without further ado, I am going to plunge right in. Aurora's trying to nibble me. Oh dear, she's so sweet. Laurie Denham says, "Dear Lady C, thank you for your insightful videos." Thank you. I'm glad you found them insightful. One does try. It's really rather tiresome to not delve beneath the surface, I find. I always like to know what's really happening, what's really going on, what the true story is, as opposed to what we're being fed. She continues, "Yesterday, while watching some videos, I came across a statement that Harry has included a chapter in his upcoming book on the false affair rumor that was circulating last year. It also indicated that the rumor started from MM, as she is acquainted with the reporter who confessed to starting the story. This could be very damaging." May I interject and say to whom? Is there any substance to the idea of Harry putting this in his book? Can William sue either Harry or the publishers? The whole idea makes me worry for William and Catherine, as they have already dealt with this once. Thanks for your consideration." Well, I've now been asked this question on so many occasions that I think I can't dodge the bullet any longer, although I have to say I've been trying to do so. First of all, because I think it's unfair to all the participants except those who fabricated and leaked the story. Giles Corran, who is a Times journalist and rather chic, he's a food critic as well, tweeted something that he then backtracked upon. He was very mischievous, and he also managed to even bring in that, "Darling, even us Jews, although admittedly I'm a posh Jew, if such a thing exists," he said. So he even managed to get in a bit of race relations. And of course, he ought to know that there is such a thing as a posh Jew. After all, the Rothschilds are posh, to use a vulgarism that he has used. The Roseberrys are part Jewish. Possibly the Carnarvons. Possibly, definitely the Carnarvons are part Jewish. Because Almina was the daughter of one of the Rothschilds, irrespective of who she produced her son with. That's just a few. Edwina Ashley, daughter of Lord Mount Temple, wife of Prince Louis of Battenberg, who became Lord Louis Mountbatten, then the first Earl Mountbatten of Burma. She was a granddaughter of Sir Ernest Cassel, a well-known German Jewish banker. Her mother was Jewish. That meant that in the Orthodox tradition, as Giles Corran should know only too well if he's Jewish, she was Jewish. In fact, the Mountbatten children were sent to America to stay with Grace Vanderbilt during the Second World War because they were fully aware of the fact that if Hitler invaded Britain, they would have been exterminated. So I think if we can separate the racial baiting that has been injected into this, no matter how drolly it was, and separate it from the rest of the rather distasteful subject. Who benefits? Who has benefited? Who has been pushing this story all along? Laurie Denham? Certainly, her people have been pushing it. And remember, Harry and Meghan are Romeo and Juliet, Abelard and Eloise, Bonnie and Clyde. Who else are they? Mutt and Jeff? Not quite, but Leopold and Loeb? Well, certainly dangerous enough to bear some comparison. So there they are, the great and devoted lovers who have the perfect foil for what they, or their people to be more accurate, would like us to believe, because we need to remember that we need to be very careful what we say for legal reasons. So we need to be careful whom we accuse of what. So I'm not accusing anybody of anything except taking Giles Corran at his word that he made it up. And then that Meghan's people ran with it to promote her and show how wonderful she is and how marvelous she and Harry are and how much better suited for the throne they are than William and Catherine. I mean, you really couldn't make any of this up, could you? You know? Has Harry put it in the book? Well, let me put it this way. They've certainly made sure that people who are interested in the subject are going to buy the book to see whether it is in it or not, and whether it was ever in it or not. They have now got the mileage that having it in the book would have afforded them without the downside if it's not in the book, because you can rest assured anything published along those lines would result in permanent isolation. You know, the whole thing is deeply regrettable because the young woman in question is a devoted mother of 3, very happily married to a very handsome man who's a bit older than she is. They are richer than most of the royals put together. Well, he is. Fortunately for them, his position as Lord Great Chamberlain has lapsed for the next 2 reigns. It's now Lord Carrington. Before it was David. He's no longer the Lord Great Chamberlain. Because it's a hereditary thing that is every 2 generations, switching between the 2 families. The idea that people who lead perfectly normal, respectable, acceptable, decent, traditional aristocratic lives with all that involves reverence for duty, respect for tradition, respect for everybody's privacy, that they could have been dragged into something so uncalled for is outrageous. You know, the family is a very grand aristocratic family. On the husband's side, the Cholmondeleys are one of the richest and grandest families in this country, incidentally part Jewish as well, Giles Corran, because the present Lord Cholmondeley's grandmother, Sybil, was Sybil Sassoon. She was Jewish, and she lived in some splendor in Kensington Palace Gardens. I had to go there once to pick up or deliver something. Must have been the late 70s, early 80s. I don't remember when it was, it's so long ago. And I remember the house really rather well. Splendid. Nowadays, they're mostly ambassadors' residences. Rose Cholmondeley, his wife, she was a model, very pretty girl. Her mother was Lady Elizabeth Longman. Sorry, her grandmother was Lady Elizabeth Longman, who was a great friend and lady-in-waiting of the Queen. And if I remember correctly, she was one of the train bearers at the coronation. She was Lady Elizabeth Lambert. Her first cousin, ironically enough, Edith Foxwell, Lady Edith Foxwell, was a far more on the map social figure from the 1950s to the 1980s than Elizabeth Longman. Elizabeth Longman was very retiring compared to Edith, who, as I said, was one of the great social figures of the latter half of the 20th century. Rose's sister, Marina, is married to the Earl of Durham, Ned Lambton that was. His father was Tony Lambton, a very naughty boy. And Tony's long-standing girlfriend, Claire Ward, is the mother of Tracy, who is best known as the Marchioness of Worcester, although she is now the Duchess of Beaufort. But her ex-husband, Bunter, has a new Duchess. So the families are very well established, and indeed the Beauforts are the heads of the Somerset family, from whom I bought Castle Goring and who still own the Castle Goring estate. So I suppose you could say that it's wheels within wheels. And I have to tell you, everybody's absolutely appalled that this story is still being promulgated, because it should not be. These people need to be left alone in peace. Even though the contrast is so pronounced. Ah, Mr. DeMille, H and I are ready for our close-up. Now, do you want to see a little tongue or a lot of tongue? Because we're the greatest lovers that ever lived. Yes. Yes. We are the perfect embodiment of fidelity and loyalty, except to everybody else. Aren't we just wonderful, Mr. DeMille? Rachel Butler says, Hollywood Saturday night, the usual stars attended the Academy Museum Gala. The honoree was Julia Roberts, LA's favorite and influentials at this celebration of cinema history. Amal and George Clooney, stars, walked the red carpets. Faux celebrities Meghan Markle and Has were not invited. After all the lies and pushing herself forward, zero talent Meg was never known by these Hollywood stars. Now they want to keep it like that. Meghan and Has are as if they have a plague. People are running from them, it seems. What do you think, Lady C? Has Meghan Markle herself? Yes, she has. In a nutshell, she has. You know, Meghan should have remembered that there's such a thing as box office poison. And the way to become box office poison is to have a string of failures. Well, before Suits, she had a string of failures in front of the camera. And since Suits, she's had a string of failures, even though she's not been professional as an actress. Well, let me rephrase that. She's been an actress. She's just not been sold as a professional actress. She's been sold as a professional royal. And she's had a string of failures there as well. And she simply doesn't get it that Hollywood likes success. Hollywood likes glamour. Hollywood doesn't want you showing up for the Academy Awards looking like a bag lady, literally or figuratively. Meghan has sold down the river the one firm reason she had for being in front of or behind a camera in Hollywood hereafter, which was being a member of the royal family. Well, how appealing is it to be a royal if you're slagging off the royals and the royal system? So she's miscalculated. And yes, I mean, the list of people who were there is quite comprehensive. And so I'm going to list a few of them. Julia Roberts was the honoree, and I have to say she looked like something the cat dragged in. What did she think she was doing? I mean, really, just dreadful, I thought. There were Amal and George Clooney, and she always looks fabulous. She really does. And Harry and Meghan should take a leaf out of George and Amal Clooney's book as to how to dress, and not only how to dress and look dapper, but how to comport themselves as a loving couple, decorous displays of marital harmony instead of bitch on heat displays of untoward carnality. Glenn Close, Tilda Swinton, Eddie Redmayne, Olivia Wilde, Hailey Bieber, Emma Stone, Spike Lee and his wife Tonya, Mindy Kaling, Laura Dern, Adrian Brody, Kerry Washington, Regina Hall, Lily Collins, Selena Gomez, Mr. and Mrs. Brooklyn Beckham. Oh my dear. I think she looks better as a blonde than a brunette, though. I wish somebody else would tell her. Joe Jonas, Sophie Turner, Selma Blair, Alicia Vikander, Kaya Gerber, Sterling R. Brown, on and on and on it goes. So practically anybody with any link to Hollywood was there. Except Maxie Baby, the biggest star of all. I don't know what I'm going to do. Aurora, come and console Marty. Come on. Come and console Marty. Marty needs some help. Marty needs to be consoled by you. Yes. And RPP says, Lady C, did you hear how former Prime Minister John Major has roundly condemned the Crown as damaging and malicious fiction? Can you please comment on that? I have no doubt you will shed revealing light on what seems to be an increasingly dark show. Do you believe the Crown is deliberately trying to damage the real Crown? I think they are irresponsible, and I don't think they care whether they damage the real Crown or not. I think rather like Harry and Meghan, as long as it puts shekels in their bank account, that's all they care about. And the way to do it is to court controversy and preferably stoke the fires of not only controversy, but believability, pushing things to the outer limit. And if they were not being malicious and destructive, why do they lie and why do they have false narratives? Because the reality is a far better drama than what they come up with. They're cack-handed and overblown and superficial rendering of what it was like to be royal is actually very pathetic and bad writing. I agree with John Major. They made the big mistake of including John Major when he was Prime Minister in a scene with Prince Charles, as he then was, where Charles is effectively complaining about the length of time his mother is taking to die. And could the Prime Minister please help him to dislodge this inconvenient woman? And he goes into the parallels between his great grandfather Edward VII and Queen Victoria, because Edward VII had to wait many years to accede to the throne. The fictional Major asks Charles to clarify his point, and Charles responds, I am saying what a pity it was. What a waste that his voice, his presence, his vision wasn't incorporated earlier. It would have been so good for everybody. Well, John Major has, and I have to tell you, I've always had a lot of time for John Major. They used to call him Grey. I always thought he was far more capable than he was given credit for being, and deserved a far smoother ride than he got. But it has to be said, the Conservative Party seem to have learnt no lessons from the debacle that they embarked upon in their insecurity and stupidity over Mrs. Thatcher, and they are doing the same thing again. I think it's called self-annihilation. Very, very unfortunate. John Major has now issued a lengthy statement to the Mail, which says in part, if the scenes you describe are broadcast, they should be seen as nothing other than damaging and malicious fiction, a barrel load of nonsense peddled for no other reason than to provide maximum and entirely false dramatic impact. The reality is the king could sue, but I don't think he's going to sue, because John Major has got the point across handsomely. Kitty B says, Ghislaine Maxwell, in her first interview from prison, says the infamous photo of Prince Andrew with Virginia Giuffre is not real, and there never was an original one produced. Also that her dear friend, quote unquote, Prince Andrew, is paying a high price for their friendship. I wish she had said all this when Queen Elizabeth was still alive. I agree, but I don't think she could. She has her own interests to consider, and they are paramount, because she is facing possibly the rest of her life incarcerated. So I cut her some slack in that regard. Of course, people are saying that she's done him no favours by bringing this up now. I disagree. I think it's the right thing to do. I also know Lady Victoria Harvey, who used to step out with Prince Andrew. And Victoria has chapter and verse on the fact that that photograph is fake. It was fabricated. I saw her just a few days ago, and I actually asked her what was happening about it. And something is happening about it, but I'm not at liberty to say what, and everything will be dealt with in its own time. But the fact of the matter is, when the photograph originally came into existence, Gillen was asked if it was real, and without even bothering to look at it closely, if I remember correctly, she said she thought it was. Well, I know from what I've heard that the photograph is not real. But more than that, at this point, I don't want to say. I hope that people begin to understand, now that the Queen has died, why Prince Andrew felt it was imperative to not keep the case going, because he knew his mother's lifespan was limited, and he did not want the ongoing case with Virginia Giuffre to destroy her Jubilee celebrations. I've said it before, and I'm going to hammer it home again, because the fact of the matter is that Prince Andrew did the decent thing and fell on his sword. And I know that people have other views, but insofar as I'm concerned, prostitution is a far more honourable profession than selling lies to the newspapers. And therefore, I would say that whatever Virginia Giuffre did when she was 17 years old, and if we believe her original account, or even her latter-day account, she sold herself. He didn't know it, but she knew it. And Jeffrey Epstein knew it. Andrew didn't know it. And that, I would submit, was a lot more honourable than her subsequent conduct. Derm D says, Lady C, what title will Queen Camilla hold if the king dies before her? Would she continue to be known as queen? Would her children be as entitled to royal assets when she dies? Thanks, and I love the show. Nikki, Aurora, Treasure, and the boys. Dermot from Dublin. Dermot from Dublin, thank you very much. And of course, Aurora has come and brought her fur to tickle my nostrils. So, should the king die before the queen, she will be known as either Queen Camilla or the Dowager Queen Camilla. I suspect she will be known as Queen Camilla. But who knows? She might even be known as the Dowager Queen or the Queen Dowager. There are variations. There hasn't been a Dowager Queen for some time. The last Dowager Queen in reality was Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and the one before was Queen Mary, neither of whom were called Dowager, and the one before that was Queen Alexandra, and I don't recall that she was known as the Dowager Queen either. So I would opt for, if regularity is going to be followed, Queen Camilla. Mari Melsa says, Dear Lady C, question, did you see Meghan touch Catherine's hand when they were walking by her to their seats, when William was letting them go to their seats first? What do you think that touch meant? I'm not sure why Markle did that, but Catherine looked upset after it happened. Yes, Mari Melsa, a very good observation that many people have actually highlighted. Why would she have done it? Because Meghan is very provocative. Meghan will have known that it would upset Catherine and that there was nothing Catherine could do about it. And so she would have done it because she could get away with it and there was nothing that anybody could do. It's called pressing your buttons. It's called invading your space. It's something that a certain personality type does. I've seen many women who wanted to press the buttons of someone else do things like that. I've even had it done to me by a fellow passenger on a private cruise who was trying to goad me into losing my temper. That's the sort of thing that mean girls do, because they know it will get to you. But you know, when you do it in front of the world and everybody knows that your touch, A, is unnecessary and B, is not going to be received with any gratification, who are you harming? Initially the person, but also yourself. You see, it seems that all of Meghan's old tricks that worked in private, now that they're being done on a world stage, are actually exposing her. So it's really not very clever, is it? Lorraine Nicoletti says, Dear Lady C, you went into with absolute accuracy the ways pathological narcissists use and twist the truth for their benefit. Then she has in brackets mother. I don't know whether it's hers or mine. Maybe mine, since I wrote the book. Yes, their radar is sharp and they are constantly alert to change the truth and ours. The victims do not do that. Our system works differently. Their system works in reverse. We can't fathom this and we get destroyed. Every one of their senses is used to change the truth to fit their lies. Yes, they use the truth, they use reality, they use fact in a particular way, but I'll get to that in a moment. Sally Willis says, Dear Lady C, you have given a brilliant description of a key aspect of personality disorders. Yes, these people are not mad or insane. They know what they are doing. They know when and when not to show their extremely destructive feelings and in front of and towards whom. I'd also add with feelings conduct. You have mentioned this recently and again in this episode. I'm so glad that you have emphasized this point. I have had personal experience as a target of such behavior. Thank you for reinforcing this message so that we can understand personality disorders better. Yes, thank you. I think it is important that those of us who have lived and survived well, should hand on the roadmap to those who still need to traverse the terrain. That was one of the reasons why Erica Freeman wanted me to write Daughter of Narcissus. And when I get comments like this, and I do get letters and such from people as well, it shows that Erica was absolutely right. And everything she said has vindicated her position, because I initially didn't want to write the book. People like my mother, and we'll stick to my mother because you can apply it across the board, because you know I don't actually agree with Tolstoy. Tolstoy said, happy families, or words to this effect, happy families are all the same and each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. I don't agree with that. I think that unhappy families share many parallels. Unhappy people and destructive people and people with personality disorders, I think they have fewer parameters. They have fewer choices of conduct. I think they are lesser. They're not greater. They may do greater harm, but they are really creators who use fact and fiction the way a sculptor uses clay To them, fact and fiction are both of equal importance. There's no real distinction as far as they're concerned between fact and fiction. Both exist for their convenience to grab and mold until they create the impression, the narrative, the facade, the sculpture that they want us to see. They are constantly twisting and turning fact, amalgamating fiction with it. Lying. They are pathological liars. They know they're lying. They don't care that they're lying, as long as the lie serves their purpose, which is the ever-increasing refinement of their facade. That's all that matters to them. L.K. Rachel says, what stands out to me is that the Prince and Princess of Wales are giving awards. Sorry. Well, the Harkles are purchasing awards to receive for themselves. It's embarrassing. Royals don't receive awards. They give them. Well, as a rule of thumb, you couldn't be more correct. And Marge Diogi says, there is a huge difference between the two couples. Prince William and Princess Catherine are always giving recognition and some awards to people who work hard to help others improve their lives. But Harry and Meghan Markle, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, are always the ones receiving awards for work no one seems to see them do. Very well observed. They have perverted the meaning of royalty. They have monetized that which should never be sold. They have twisted so that gift and receipt becomes effectively of equal consequence in terms of their public image. Their supposed wonderful charity work that they're being so acknowledged for and rewarded with is virtually non-existent. I mean, I know people locally, and I'm speaking about people on a very pedestrian level, who do more for charity than they do. I am a patron of a local charity here, and I'm not going to mention their name to embarrass them, but each of them works harder for a week than Meghan and Harry collectively work for a year. These people are unsung heroes. Harry and Meghan are sung fabricators of nonsense, really. That's my view. June Puteran says, Lady C, I am worried about Angela Kelly, the Queen's best friend. From what I understand, she was not only the Queen's dresser, she was a designer and in charge of the Queen's jewels, and from what I might have interpreted, also the Queen's personal carer. I'm concerned with whether the family are looking after her. She must be experiencing great sadness. Do you know what has happened to her? Well, I have a friend who's a friend of Angela Kelly's. So I need to be careful what I say, because I wouldn't want Angela Kelly thinking that this friend has spilt any beans which this friend has not spilt. What I will say is that the Queen loved Angela Kelly and Angela Kelly loved the Queen. Angela Kelly was a fierce guardian of the Queen's time and space. As a result, she ruffled feathers. She knew that she had the Queen's backing, and she, out of loyalty to and love for the Queen, fought the Queen's corner when she believed the Queen wanted that corner fought. Some people at the palace also thought she got too big for her boots and she was throwing her weight around. However, she has not been frozen out. Those who liked her will continue to like her. Those who didn't will be delighted that her raison d'etre has to a large extent evaporated. Now, the Queen took good care of Angela before she died. She made sure that Angela would be able to earn money, and she made sure that she had a roof over her head for the rest of her life. She will be okay. Of course, her glory days are at an end. That's the way of the world. You know, whether it's a monarchy or an electorate or a business, once the chairman or the president or the monarch is no longer here, I'm afraid those who were his or her cohorts have seen better days. That's the reality of life. But she will be okay. She will be okay. And she's a tough old boot. And she's also very honourable. Not everybody likes her, but she, I know, is honourable. And when you're honourable, ultimately, your honour is a comfort as well as a shield. Kathleen Quinlan says, Lady C, I'm quite befuddled by the American use of the term coronate, as in King Charles III will be coronated on May 6th. While the use is present in the dictionary, it's not a term that I have heard on this side of the Atlantic. We would say King Charles III will be crowned, etc. Can you please comment? Thank you. Yes, I can comment. Coronations are events that take place when monarchs are crowned. You know, we're living in a world, language always changes, but we're living in a world where people have no respect for practically any system that exists. They think whatever the system is, no matter how good it is, it can be improved, even if by improving it, you make it worse. We see this every day. Babies being thrown out with bathwater. We see it in politics. We see it in personal behavior. We see it in the values that are espoused. We also see it in the language. I'll use another example. Why is it he referenced that book? No, he didn't. He referred to that book. The book that he referred to was a reference book. The word reference is an outgrowth of the verb refer. Just as coronation is an outgrowth of the word crown. Why do you then need to create a new verb out of an outgrowth of the old verb when the old verb exists, and in both instances is actually shorter. Think about that for a second. Crown and refer instead of referenced and coronated. No, people aren't coronated, they are crowned at a coronation. Anything else is bad English, and I don't care what reference book it is in. It is bad English. Just because the language is updated so that gross errors are then accepted as being customary doesn't mean they are desirable. There is a reason why language is so powerful. Remember the saying, the pen is mightier than the sword? The sword may put down an awful lot, but words are what build up. And the pen is mightier than the sword only if you appreciate the power of the language. And to do that, you have to respect it in its entirety. That means that grammar is important, because all of this is code. It's code that gives richness to life by creating meaning in as hopefully shorthand a manner as possible. And if you have to delve around and scratch in the chicken coop for new words to describe old ideas when there are older and better and shorter words that already exist, what are you doing? You're not expanding the language. You are actually weakening the language. That's what you're doing. Language matters. I think people have figured out that language matters a lot to me, because language is what conveys a thought. And the more skilled you are in conveying the thought accurately, is the more potently you get your point across. You don't need to be vulgar and ghastly and exhibitionistic. You just need to be clear, accurate, and avail yourself of the words that already exist. And fortunately for us, English is one of the richest languages with one of the largest vocabularies. So we are very lucky. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell. And remember, please keep the questions and comments coming in. This cannot be done without you. God bless and goodbye.